My name is Sergey Dari from SEMrush, and I'm being joined by special guest Joe Williams. And Joe will be telling us all about Google Analytics and specifically 7 strategies that every SEO needs to know. So, Joe, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about what you're doing, and then basically you can go ahead and kick it off.
Okay, so Jay, well, yeah, thanks again for the opportunity, and I'd just like to thank everyone who's listening today. I'm sure you're all very busy, just with day-to-day stuff. So I'm going to make this as useful as I can for you guys. So just a little bit about who I am. So I've been doing SEO for around about 10 years, a little longer than 10 years. And that sort of ties in with when Google Analytics was created back in 2005. So I've been using it since then. I actually run an SEO training company in London. And, quite often we train small companies, but we sometimes train bigger companies as well. We've worked with The Guardian, Cosmopolitan, and some big companies. But yeah, just starting off really simple, really, because I would imagine that quite a few of you guys, in fact, probably the large proportion of you guys are already using Google Analytics. So I won't spend too much time as to why you should use it, but we'll just do a slide on it. So essentially, if you've got a website and you've got Google Analytics on it, the idea is that you're going to want to know more about who your web users are, what they're doing on your site. And obviously that's kind of where Google Analytics comes into play. So we can get an idea of where they came from, whether it was social media, Facebook, Google, Bing, ads, AdWords, email, that sort of thing. But really we can dive a lot deeper. So what keyword did they enter if they were coming from a search engine? And as we'll find out in this slide, it's not that simple to find out what keyword a user came on for SEO. But we'll look at some strategies how we can actually overcome some of the issues with Google Analytics and opening up keyword data. What landing page did they arrive on? What percentage of traffic came from the various different traffic sources? How many leads did your website generate? Did they come from SEO? What specific landing pages worked really well? How users are behaving on your site. So there's a lot of things that Google Analytics can do. And because there's so much that Google Analytics can do, and I've really just touched on the iceberg there, I think sometimes what can happen is you can kind of almost have this information overload. And what tends to happen is you tend to only use Google Analytics as and when you need it, really. So I think what we're going to do today is we're going to go on a little bit of an information diet, and specifically we're going to go on a Google Analytics and SEO diet. So I'm going to give you 7 strategies that every SEO should know. And if you sort of focus on these things, it will really help you get further insights from your website and inform you in how you can improve your SEO and make you a better SEO. Okay, so yeah, just to sort of start, we're going to be using the Google Analytics demo account, or a lot of the screenshots that I'm going to be showing you today has come from that. So what that means is, sorry about that. So what that means is it's an account, an actual real-life account that Google uses for its own merchandise store. And it's probably the best way of learning, because in some ways, you can learn all the theory in the world, but until you put it into practice, it's not maybe always as understood as it could be. And Google actually opened up this demo account in August this year. So it's a really, really good way of actually learning through experience. So this is an example of a checkout behavior analysis report. So you can see how users are dropping off in the shopping cart process. So in theory, you could read about this in the Google Analytics help files, but when you can actually play with this data in an account, it really does help you learn that much quicker and more efficiently. So if you've been following Google Analytics for a while, you'll probably know Avinash. He's a digital marketing evangelist for Google, and he's considered a Google Analytics expert. He's also written 2 books on Google Analytics, and he says that his books aren't enough because there's a lot of theory there, but it's hard to put into practice. So he's really a big fan of this demo account. So if you haven't used it before, I'll encourage you to do so, and I'll show you how you can do that. And he's also mentioned that he's got an awesome bundle of segments, dashboards, and custom reports. So we're going to talk about all of those things today and how you use them. And then I'll also show you how you can actually download his bundle of dashboards and reports, which are really, really useful. Okay, so it's a fully functional Google Analytics account. It has real business data. You obviously need a Google account, and you can create one there. And it's really, really simple. You just click on a link, and it gets added to your account. So where does the data come from? Well, it actually is a real Google store. And some ways that you could use the demo account. Well, maybe you want to have a look at AdWords or Google Search Console. We'll look at a little bit of that today. We'll also look at dashboards. We'll look at segments. And Google's got this really cool solutions gallery where you can actually just use other people's reports and custom segments. So we'll be looking at that today as well. And we'll be looking at dashboards, reports, and attribution models as well. So in terms of getting started, I think most people here will already have Google Analytics installed, but if you don't, there is a slide here that you can refer to. If you're using WordPress, there's a popular plugin, used to be called Google Analytics by Yoast, but they've actually passed on their business to Monster Insights. So that might be a good way of just of setting up Google Analytics if you have WordPress. It has a freemium and a premium model, so you can, you might want to check out both. Okay, so in terms of how Google Analytics has changed, so yeah, this is actually going back in 2014, but you'll sometimes find myself referring, using visits rather than sessions. So back a couple of years ago, we used to call a session a visit, and we also used to call unique visitors. We used to call users unique visitors. So just a little bit of terminology there, if you're not familiar with the new or the old. But focusing more on what has changed recently. So Search Engine Land actually announced that Google Search Console is now much more deeply integrated into Google Analytics. So that was back in May. And what that meant is that we were getting more conversion data aligned to Google Search Console, and we're also getting some behavioral data, which we didn't really have to as much detail previously. At the moment, this is mainly working at landing page level rather than keyword level, but it's definitely an improvement. We can start to sort of track our keywords and landing pages, or certainly our landing pages, a little bit better from that perspective. This is actually a screenshot from SEMrush. It's their keyword ranking tool. So one of the things we do in SEO is we obviously we report on keywords, but really if we're just reporting on keywords, we're only really seeing a small proportion of our SEO progress. So I definitely recommend checking out the SEMrush keyword ranking tool if you haven't already. But we will want to be looking at organic traffic. So organic traffic essentially is SEO traffic. And we're going to be wanting to look at conversions. So what actually generates sales on your website? If your website is an e-commerce, what generates leads? Maybe it's emails, white papers, could even be videos, and we'll be looking at some user-based reports and alerts as well. So more on that a little bit later. Okay, so we're going to look at 7 strategies. The first strategy is probably going to be, I'd say, very familiar for most people that have used Google Analytics for a while. But we're just going to cover it just so everyone is aware, and then we'll get a little bit, we'll dive quite a bit deeper with the other 6 strategies. So the first one is we're just going to look at the dates, which is in the top right. And by default, what Google does is it goes back to the previous month, the same date, and it kind of takes away a day. So in this case, when I ran the report on the 29th of November, it looked at the previous day, which was the 28th of November, and then tracked back to the 29th of October. And obviously in the custom area, we can change dates as well. We can compare to a period. So in this case, it's the period of the month before, and we can customize that as well. So pretty straightforward stuff. And what we can see here is that the blue dots are the most recent month in the Google demo account, and the orange ones are the month before. So we can see sessions are up actually 27%. So that's encouraging for Google from an analytical perspective. So 2 ways that we can look at organic search. We can look at it through the sidebar. So under acquisition, all traffic, channels, and then organic search. But what you, sorry, just bear with me a second. But we can see that in this case, the top keyword is not provided and not set, which we're going to come back to in a moment because obviously we want to get more data and information on that. The second way to look at organic search is by doing it through a segment, and this is the way that I tend to look at SEO data. The benefit of going through a segment is it isolates the data for one particular criteria. So in this case, it's SEO or organic traffic, and it means we can open up the whole sidebar for just that type of traffic. So in this case, I'm just going to click organic traffic, and then we can see we are getting reports for not just all users, but for organic traffic as well. So, you know, very easy and I guess quite obvious, but an essential one that you'll need to know. Okay, so now that we've got organic traffic and date out of the way, we're going to look at how you can maximize your Google Search Console reports. Now, Google Search Console used to be called Google Webmaster Tools, changed its name maybe a couple of years ago. Still very similar in terms of its functionality, but one of the key things that you'll need to do is make sure that you link your Google Search Console account to your Google Analytics account, and that will mean that you can pass keyword data from Search Console to Google Analytics. And it really means you'll get a lot more keyword information into Google Analytics. So it's a really important step if you value your SEO information. So if you look there, there is actually a link, www.zen.im/ga-gsc, and that will just take you through to the article in question. You'll see quite a lot of those as we go through today. And you'll get an opportunity to have the slides as well at the end if you haven't already. The other thing to bear in mind is that the historical data through Search Console only lasts 90 days. So it will only last 90 days in Google Analytics. So this is just one part of Google Analytics that will last 90 days. Everything else will last a lot longer. And we can see that the lag is actually 48 hours before data is reported into Google Search Console. Okay, so when we look at acquisition and Search Console, what we can see is there is an area here for landing pages by default. Impressions are how often that landing page was shown to the user. Clicks is how often someone clicked on the listing. Click-through rate is the percentage of clicks from impressions. And the average position we can see there is 8th. So if we look at the very first result, which is the men's t-shirt, we can see it's got the most impressions. We can see what the click-through rate is, and we can see what the ranking is for that page. But if we compare that to the third result, the third result actually has more clicks, even though it has less impressions. So what that really means is that even though that third landing page is potentially there's less search volume around that page, or less searches that that page is ranking for, it's got a higher click-through rate. It's got 6.28 compared to 0.99. And that's largely because it's actually ranked higher on Google. But it may be that the meta description or the title tag on the YouTube listing was just a little bit more engaging, or a little bit more interesting, so it's getting more clicks. What we could be thinking about is firstly, one, can we improve the men's t-shirts in terms of making it more engaging? So we can look at improving the meta description tag and the title tag, or we might just say, hey, is there anything we can do to improve the rankings on either listing? So in May, as we mentioned before, Google added more conversion data for landing pages, countries and devices. But annoyingly, they didn't add it for keywords. So when we actually look at the keywords listing, we don't get that data, which is a little bit frustrating. But as I said before, we're going to try and do some clever stuff a little bit later in the webinar, whereby we'll be able to get a bit more data. Now, what's quite interesting here is we can see that there's 379 transactions being reported, but there's actually 0 for the most impressions page, the t-shirts page, which seems very strange to me. And this is the kind of type of thing that you need to look out for when you're an SEO looking at analytical data. You're trying to work out things that maybe don't add up, but maybe you could kind of reason as to why it happened. So if you click transactions, what will happen now is Google will order by the top transactions. So I'll just do that. And we'll just take a look at the landing page. It's for the t-shirts page, and we can notice quite a few of the letters are uppercase. In fact, all of the letters beginning with a word are uppercase. And then when I sort by transactions, what we can see is the third result is actually the t-shirts page, and it's all lowercase. So what we can deduce from that is that Google at some point has changed its URLs, maybe in the checkout page, and it's actually had a knock-on effect with reporting, because Google Analytics is actually seeing the two URLs as being different. So it just highlights really that we want to be as consistent as possible in terms of how we set up URLs, and a good convention is to try and stick to lowercase URLs wherever possible. In this case, I don't think there was really a problem with duplicate content, because the URL was being generated at the shopping cart stage, but it has had an effect on tracking, as we can see here. Okay, so yeah, again, we're just looking back at that original slide, and we can see that the casing is different. If I was to actually click onto the landing page, then we can see some information about the keywords, so that's quite useful to know. In terms of countries, that's the next one down under Search Console, and we can see a lot of the revenue is coming from Google. But if we look at the United Kingdom, it's actually being reported as 0. So that says to me either there is a massive problem, and for some reason users in the UK just can't access the shopping cart, or there's a problem on the site. But I think more than likely in this case it's probably an issue with the with the demo account, Google Analytics demo account, just not reporting the data. But either way, if this was happening on my own site, that would be something that I would really want to get to try and work out what the problem is. Devices, pretty straightforward. You get an idea, desktop, mobile, tablet. And then when we look at queries, so we're just essentially looking to see what keywords generated traffic to the site. So in this case, we can see YouTube merch. It's their fourth highest keyword, and they're ranked fourth. So I would probably say, hey, look, this is Google we're talking about. They can probably do better than fourth. So let's have a look to see who is ranked first. So it's these guys called district lines. And you can see they have optimized for that phrase. They've worked it in their title tag, that top clickable link, and they've worked it in the content as well. So I think if Google really prioritized that keyword, they could definitely do better than fourth, and they could probably almost certainly outrank district lines. But again, it comes down to priority. This may be something that Google's just seen as low priority, so they haven't put much effort into it. But in this case, this is the type of thing to be looking out for. Are there any opportunities where there are keywords that you value quite highly that you could put more effort into in terms of on-page optimization? So as we mentioned before, the 2 most recent days isn't captured. And we also looked at you can't get data further back than 90 days for Search Console data. But there is kind of a little bit of a hack around this. So it's a bit of a hack, as I say, but if you want it longer than 90 days, what you can actually do is just email reports to yourself. So if you click on the email option, you can email by landing page, countries, queries, devices, and you can say how often you want them to be emailed to you. So if you ever do need historical data, or you just want to collect it and use that data, then that is an option of getting that data to go back a little bit further. Alternatively, if you're quite techy, Google has an API that you could use, and you might find that there are some tools out there that actually use that API for you to collect that data. Okay, so keyword not provided. I think a lot of SEOs, this is kind of one of the most frustrating parts about reporting on SEO. So let's just have a look at what it is. But before we do look at not provided, we're actually going to look at not set. So we've gone acquisition, campaigns, organic traffic. And what not set essentially means is it's not captured. So Google sometimes isn't perfect and it won't capture data. And in occasions, the data just isn't available for Google to actually collect. So if we click on this not set keyword, what I can do is I can actually have a look at second dimension. I can go to look at source. So the source means where did this data come from? And what we can see is the source is Baidu, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is a Chinese search engine. And it appears that that search engine actually isn't providing the data to Google Analytics. So Google Analytics actually isn't doing anything wrong, it just can't capture that data, so it's being said as not set. For SEO, we find not set isn't normally that bigger a proportion, unless, in this example, you might be getting a lot of Chinese traffic. But if you're doing a lot of paid search, you'll quite often find the not set might be a little bit bigger in terms of a percentage. Okay, so let's have a look at not provided. We can see it's very big, so 32,730 sessions out of just over 34,000. So what is this not provided? Let's have a little look. So not provided, this is coming from a website called notprovidedcount.com, and going back in 2011, Google made their website secure. They added HTTPS, and in doing so, they felt a moral code that they shouldn't be passing on all their data to be tracked for analytics. They felt it should be private. So, we can kind of say this is a privacy issue. But on the one hand, we're thinking of it as a private issue. But as Danny Sullivan put it, Google has put a price on privacy because this data is actually all available on Google AdWords. So it kind of sort of seems a little bit of double standards there. But this has been around for 5 years now, that SEOs are not having the full picture of what keywords are sending traffic from an organic perspective. It used to be, almost perfect, the data that we had over 5 years ago, but it's a little bit harder to work out now. That said, we're going to look at some ways that we can try and overcome this not provided issue. So those that are from the UK will probably recognize this lady. Her name is Mystic Meg, and she used to be on a TV program where she'd make some sort of crazy predictions. So I thought I would have a go, throw my hat into the ring. And for 2017, my prediction is that Google will lift the SEO not provided issue for websites on HTTPS. Google has kind of slightly hinted that they're going to give more keyword data available to us for SEOs, and I think this might be one of the ways. But just a little bit of a warning, I'm sure many of you have moved on to HTTPS. It used to be that it actually slowed your site down, HTTPS, but if you're on a modern web host that is using HTTP2, it actually speeds your website now, so you shouldn't be getting those sort of slower issues. But one issue that you can have is if you do move over and you're not very thorough with your redirects, then it can be quite an issue. So if you do move over, be very thorough on those redirects. Okay, so is it possible to uncover not provided keywords? Well, it's not easy. It is kind of tough. But let's have a look at what you can do. So a lot of SEOs are kind of, rather than focusing on keywords for reporting, they're focusing more on landing pages. So if we look at the second dimension and we type in landing, we can select landing page, and that will actually tell us what landing pages are being generated for these not provided keywords. So we can see a fair proportion are going to the home page, as we would probably expect. But then we can see the second one is to the YouTube page, which we sort of discovered a little bit earlier in the slides. And we can start to think about doing reporting more on a landing page basis. But is there a better way of tracking not provided keywords? Well, SEMrush actually, only in September, so only a couple of months ago, came up with a really nice little feature that's part of its main tool, and it's called the Organic Traffic Insights, and it's specifically aimed at this not provided issue. So let's just have a little look at this image here. This is from SEMrush's tool called SEO Quake, and what we can actually see is for their homepage, we're actually getting a list of their keywords. We're seeing where they're positioned, what sort of volume there is, and the traffic share. So yeah, SEMrush is providing quite a good alternative solution to getting a little bit more Google Insights. And if I understand correctly, I think what will happen is SEMrush looks at your top 30 SEO landing pages in Google Analytics in terms of traffic, and starts feeding you more information in terms of what keywords are actually generating traffic. So that's definitely something that you guys might want to check out. It looks quite an exciting tool, so I definitely recommend having a look at that tool. So there's a link to it there if you do want to check it out, zen.im/semrush-insights. So yeah, very good tool there. In terms of Google Analytics goals and e-commerce, this is kind of really essential. Like, I would almost say if you're very serious about the success of a website or your business, and you're investing time and money into your marketing, you have to be tracking Google Analytics goals and e-commerce. And those goals have to be up to date, because sometimes what happens is you might come to a company and you see that there's some Google Analytics goals set up, and you go, hey, let's just keep an eye on these goals. But those goals may have been set up, 3 or 4 years ago when your business was doing a lot of white papers, but maybe they're doing a lot of videos now that need to be tracked, right? Which are more important than the white papers. So it's always good to revisit what you're tracking and ask yourself, is this the right thing that we need to track and measure? So coming back to Avanesh, so he's the kind of Google Analytics expert from Google, and he says focus on measuring your macro overall conversions, but for optimal awesomeness, identify and measure your micro conversions. And this is really, really important. He's been saying this since 2008. He's been saying it for quite a long time, and I think people are, starting to take note of his advice, and I would definitely recommend doing so. So let's just give you an example of what he actually means. So a macro conversion is normally the end result that you want your website or your business to do. So if you sell things online, it's going to be what you actually sell. If you don't sell something online, it's what's that next most biggest thing that you can measure online. And a micro conversion is any positive outcome or interaction that someone can have with your website that could be measured. And it might not be obviously something that you would measure. So let's have a look at some examples about how you can do that. So let's imagine that your website has a careers page, and it has a contact us page, and you've got a couple of jobs that you're promoting on your careers page. So essentially, just to kind of recap where we were talking about micro conversions and macro conversions, and the example that we were looking at was whether maybe you had some jobs that you were advertising on your site. So a micro conversion might be that someone's filled in a contact form, and it might even be someone that's just interested in finding out more about the company. So it's something that it's an engaged user. They want to know more about maybe even the job. At this research stage, this might actually be print this page, and it could be for a job advert. So if someone's printed a page on your site, it probably means that they're quite engaged on that particular page, and that might be something that you want to track as a Google Analytics goal. And when you track something as a Google Analytics goal, you can then go back and see, where did it come from? Did it come from SEO? Sometimes you can even see what keyword it came from. And there's a lot of things you can do when you're actually tracking things as Google Analytics goals. And another micro conversion might be that someone's actually applied for a job. So they've sent their CV, perhaps, maybe a covering letter, and you can track that as a Google Analytics goal as well. So let's just have a look at some examples. So Google Analytics goals, they can be both macro and micro conversions, but if you've got e-commerce set up as tracking, it tends to be that the Google Analytics goals are more micro conversions. And a contact form submission is actually quite a good example. So in this example, actually, before we look at that example, we'll just look at the 4 different types of goals. We've got a destination goal, which is kind of like a URL destination. So it might be a thank you for registering for our webinar. I'm sure SEMrush have probably got that set up. It could be a duration goal, so maybe someone spent 10 minutes or longer in the support area of your site. I'm not sure whether that would be a good thing or a bad thing to spend 10 minutes on a support area, but it depends on the nature of the business. It could be pages per session, or it could be an event. So an event might be a social recommendation. It could be that a video has been played. It could be that a PDF has been downloaded. Lots of things that an event could be. But just looking at a nice easy one. So for a contact us page, quite often you'll find that there's actually a thank you URL. So when you submit a contact form, the URL actually changes. If the URL doesn't change, you might actually have to use an event-based goal. But in this example, we can just use a destination URL-based goal. So it's pretty straightforward. We just go to Admin Goals, New Goals. I'm going to click New Goal there. And in the setter, it's actually got a Contact Us inquiry for me there. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that one. It's asking for a name, so I'm going to put in a name there. It's asking for is it a destination type goal? Now, because there is a specific URL, I'm going to say yes, it is a destination type goal. It's asking me what that destination URL is, so I put that in there. And it's also giving me the option to set up a funnel. So a funnel might be a little bit overkill for a Contact Us page, but it would be pretty essential for an e-commerce aspect of a website, or a number of sequence steps that you want to measure just to see where the drop-off is. But in this case, I've just put in what the Contact Us page is, so I can see what percentage of people, drop off from viewing the Contact Us page to actually submitting the form. So we've got conversions, and then we've got goal URLs, and this is where you can actually see your goals data. So in this case, for Google, we can see a lot of goals were generated, or the most amount of goals were generated for yourinfo.html. And then we can see order completed was number 2 as well. Okay, and obviously we can use the organic traffic segment as well to look at that conversion data. And that would just mean that we could track goals by a particular segment, and in this case it would be SEO. There are a lot of other goals that you can track, and I have referenced a link here to a really good video by Google, which kind of goes a little bit deeper into what goals you can track, and it gives you quite a few examples. So by all means, check that out. And if you do have an e-commerce aspect to your website, you obviously really want to set up the e-commerce side. So it might be that you need to get your web developer involved for some coding. Maybe you're familiar with Google Tag Manager. That's something else that a non-technical person can use. Or maybe you've got a plugin that actually adds in the e-commerce to your website. So for WordPress, Monster Insights is an example for that. Okay, so now we're looking at strategy number 5 now, which is custom reports and segments. So custom reports is, rather than just rely on a standard report, you can create your own report. And this is actually found in the customization area here. So we can create a new one. At the moment, the demo account doesn't have any in there. And this is what a custom report will look like. So we'll come back to this screen in a moment, and I'll just give you a real-life example. But before we do, we'll just quickly look at segments. And this is where, as I mentioned before, when we looked at the organic example, is where you isolate specific traffic throughout the whole of Google Analytics. So we can just add a new one in that plus area. And we can either just choose an existing one. Google has some good defaults, or we can create a new one. And again, we're going to have a look at some examples of what you might do to create some segments as well. But I thought what would be quite good is Google has got a really good document called Analysis Techniques for Google Organic Search and SEO. So there's a link to that on this slide. And what they do is they give you some tips about the types of things you might want to be tracking as an SEO. So in there you can actually download a custom report, which is really simple to do. You just click on the link, and we can see it's actually called an SEO not provided report. So that sounds quite useful. And what that's actually done is it's actually listed all the landing pages that have come from not provided keywords, and it's given us some key metrics like sessions, bounce rates, conversion goals, etc. And obviously, over time, what you'll want to see is that those blue dots are slightly increasing over time. And if you click Edit, then we can just see how this was actually set up. So it's actually fairly straightforward. When we look at the metric groups, these are the types of metrics that we want to report on. And then the dimensions are actually what is it that we want to report on. So we want to report by landing page. We want to report where a keyword match is exactly not provided. So that's an example of a custom report. And obviously there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can do around that. So definitely recommend that one. In terms of segments, Google suggests that maybe what you can do is you can create a segment for organic traffic, but excludes brand pages. So maybe you would exclude your home page, you might exclude your About Us page, and then that means that you're focusing on those SEO pages that maybe you can influence a little bit more. Multi-channel funnels and attributions, definitely check that out. We've looked at Google Search Console data. And Google also has some ideas for content ideas and internal site search analysis. So you might want to check that out as well. Okay, so number 6 is custom alerts. Now I find this one quite an interesting one, and you can access it from intelligence events and then daily events. And just notice this pop-up, but automatic alerts will be removed from Google soon. So these are ones which Google will automatically alert you if it thinks it needs to. So something changes quite quite intensively. But you can still create your own custom alerts. And it's actually quite easy to do. You just click the create alert, you set the name, you set the period that you want to track, and then you say what conditions you want to be alerted by. So you'll be alerted by email or text message. And I thought I would just refer back to a Google blog post, which you can access from these slides. And we'll just look at the top 2 from 6 that Google recommends checking out. The first one is emergency aspect. So it might be average page load time is over 10 seconds. That sounds like an emergency to me. Maybe you've got no sessions today. Could be that the website's down or the Google Analytics code has been taken off the site, or maybe no conversions on a particular day for a specific goal. Some other ones are performance related. So maybe you've got a 10% increase or decrease in the average page load time for 1 month compared to the other. If you've got a big website, or if you've got a website with a lot of traffic and that traffic is increasing, you might find that over time, if you've got a lot of redirects, it might be slowing down the website. So you can actually track the impact that that's having as well. Or maybe, again, it's quite a technical thing, but you might want to track the server response time. Again, if there's a 10% fluctuation, increase or decrease, you could be alerted. And that would help you discover any potential problems sooner rather than later. So that was 2 out of the 6. If you want to have a look at the other 4 alerts, which there's some really good ones in there, then there's a link there to the post that you can check out. And that brings us to the 7th one, and this is actually where you can create your own SEO dashboard, and you can import other reports and segments into that dashboard if you like as well. So this not provided report, now I have to go into customization to see it, but it's very, very easy. If I want to add it to the dashboard, I just click add to dashboard, which is pretty cool, and I can put the timeline in, which is quite a visual way, and I can put the table in, which kind of gives a bit more information on the data. and then we can see under dashboard and organic dashboard, it's been added in there. And then any other report that I like, I can just add it into a specific dashboard, should I wish. But we've looked at Avinash a couple of times today, and he did promise us that we could look at some of his dashboards and segments and custom reports. So the way that you can do this is through Google's Analytics import gallery. So this is Google Analytics Solutions Gallery, and what you can see is there's actually hundreds, and I think possibly even thousands of submissions in here where experts have added in useful reports and custom segments that you might want to check out. So you can have a look at Avanash's there. It's ranked the #1 most popular. But we'll just have a quick look at this fourth one because it's SEO related. So if I click on it and then click import, then very quickly I've got the dashboard imported, and we can see that they're actually looking at long tail traffic quite a bit. So anything with 7 or more keywords, they've created that as a as a report. And again, you might find that some of the information in here you might like to keep in your dashboard and report that way. So definitely check out the gallery. There's loads of cool reports. Not all of them SEO related. You'll find some for content marketers. You'll find some for social media guys. So some really good stuff to check out there. Now, one thing that I have mentioned is, in order to create these reports and do some of the things I've talked about today, you need to make sure you've got the right user permissions for the level of access that you have to a Google account. So you might just want to check that out if you're finding that you're struggling to create some of these reports. Okay, guys, so just to wrap things up, we've looked at, we've got the slides there again, zen.im/semrush-ga-slides. And what we've covered, well, we've covered organic traffic and date comparison, so that was quite a straightforward one. We then looked at how you maximize your Google Search Console reports, so make sure that you've linked your Search Console accounts to your Google Analytics account. And if you hadn't already noticed, before, check out that extra new conversion data that we didn't used to have, prior to May. Some good insights in there as well. In terms of keyword not provided strategies, well, we can look at the landing page a little bit more than keywords, or you might like to check out SEMrush's new tool in terms of getting keyword insights. That was quite an insightful one. In terms of Google Analytics goals, I really think this is probably one of the most underestimated areas of Google Analytics. Like, I really think if you can get some really accurate reporting from your Google Analytics goals in e-commerce, it's going to help you measure your overall success. So, spend a bit of time there if you haven't already, or if you have, maybe just revisit it and see whether there's anything new you can track. In terms of custom reports and segments, well, there's loads of flexibility there. You can kind of, slice and dice the data as you want. Custom alerts, well, the number of websites I've worked with in the past where Google Analytics just hasn't been tracked for a week, sometimes 2 weeks. Maybe the developer took the code off the website by accident. So these are all things that can be alerted to tell you when there are technical issues on your site. So definitely check those ones out. And we looked at SEO dashboards. So if you find a report that you like, you can add it into your dashboard. And there are lots of experts that have created some nice reports that we can add to our dashboard. So you might want to check that out as well. If you want to learn more, Google has this really good Academy area on their site. So you can learn at a digital analytics fundamentals area. And there's quite a few courses that you can take. So I definitely recommend checking it out. Really good insights in there. Other things that you can do, definitely check out the demo account if you haven't already. I would probably say it's the best way of learning Google Analytics because it's more than theory. You can actually see what's happening, and you can you can find out little issues and learn that way. There's the Help Center. Definitely check that out. Before the Academy or the demo account existed, I basically learned Google Analytics through the YouTube channel. So there's some really good data in there. Check out the Analytics blog, and you can subscribe via email and RSS. There's a Google Plus community. I know they're active on Twitter as well. And if you're a developer, you might like to check out the developers section. This is really cool as well, is if you have, if you are learning a lot about Google Analytics, you can actually take an exam and a certification. I've taken it myself, and I had to pay $50 to take the test, but it's now free, so you can take the test without incurring a charge. And I think to get certified by Google for free is quite a good thing. And as much as it will probably take some time to learn, I think the effort's really, really worthwhile, and it'll look good on your CV. It'll look good to your boss, and it'd be a nice thing to get if you find that you're really interested in Google Analytics. Okay, guys, so that's a wrap from me today. My name is Joe Williams. You can find me on Twitter at ZenOptimize. That's with an S rather than a Z. And feel free to just ask me any questions there, or any feedback on the webinar. That would be much appreciated. Anything good or bad. And if you do want to email me, my email address is there as well. So feel free to contact me that way. So yeah, really enjoyed myself today, and that's a wrap, guys. So I will pass you back to Sergey.
All right, thanks, Joe. Awesome, good tips. And so, guys, as Joe said, if you guys have questions, please don't hesitate. Send the questions over to Joe. You can use his Twitter hashtag or handle, that is ZenOptimize with the S. Again, thanks a lot. And everyone, please take care of yourselves, and have a awesome rest of the day and a great coming up weekend. And Joe, same to you.
Okay, yeah, thanks again. Thanks.
All right, guys, take care. Bye-bye.